Seems like it's a little faster when crew member does.
We sanking.
Sinking. Just a sinking.
Okay, we are broadcasting right now. We have been for 34 seconds,
Cool.
believe it or not.
I believe it. I won't believe it till I see it, but good morning. Good morning. Coming to you straight from Pensacola, Florida. Thankful to be in Pensacola, Florida. We're already experiencing summer, I think. It seems like it. But hey, it did snow on us in January, so summer's going to come in April. That's the way it is. We need to apologize to all you climate classified believers. Just joking. So good morning, Joey. Say something to the crowd.
Good morning. I want to discuss this climate classified believer. Sounds like an interesting topic. How do I become climate classified?
You have to, really go to a university, and you have to get about 4 or 5 degrees and have work published and book made, been on TV shows, all the channels, not just, CNN or MSNBC.
Really?
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Steep. Okay.
Yeah.
Never mind. It's too much work.
Too much work. That's what I'm thinking. I'll just do it like I do it now. Just, it'll be all right. I'll be gone before it blows up. So, no, not really. I really, I do enjoy our climate. And I like the climate here in Pensacola. Really, I was making fun of summer coming early, but I'm thankful for it. Absolutely thankful for it. Daryl's going to be joining us in just a sec. Sometimes his computer needs to update on Sunday mornings, and we give him some leeway. But we have 2 or 3 topics today that we do have clips of, but we're gonna wait for Daryl to do that. So, what's the one thing that happened this week, Joey, that you were so surprised that your eyeballs almost fell out?
Oh man.
It could be across the globe, in the United States, in your home.
Caught me off guard with that one. I don't recall being super surprised.
Well, were you surprised about the Pope falling out? Didn't he fall out? No, you. I'm not laughing about it.
I specifically asked myself, was I surprised when Pope Francis died? No, I wasn't. I mean, he's teetering on he was teetering on really, really serious health issues for a while. Seemed like he was, coming back for a moment, but then he went on to see his maker.
Yeah, I was so excited he got to come home, and he really put up a big fight in the hospital, and I was on Team Francis for him getting better. And dang, I was surprised. And it didn't go unnoticed that our vice president might have been one of the last ones to talk to him.
I keep saying that, yeah.
Yeah, and so JD, but JD is a Catholic person, and so I'm sure that was a great honor for our vice president to speak to the Pope. I don't think they spoke about world events. I'm just surmising this because he really couldn't speak a lot. He couldn't even give the Easter homily, I don't think. I think someone else had to give it. But he did go out in the square, I think. His nurse/secretary might have been the one to take him, and he allegedly, now his last words were "thank you," and his secretary/nurse companion, not companion, erase that, was there. But so it sounded peaceful. But I was surprised. But it was cool that he made it through Easter, don't you think, Joey?
Yeah, I do. As a human being, I hate to see anyone suffer, and of course was rooting for him, and I'm happy that his suffering is over. Death for us all is inevitable, so it's not necessarily something to be super regretful over. I do wonder how he felt about his own performance as Pope. I wonder if he felt like he did a good job.
I would say that was on his mind. I would think, you
Yeah.
know, I think that would be normal.
I've heard several testimonies of people and their interaction with Pope Francis, and called him a man who seemed distant. To them, he didn't seem like I mean, there's pictures of him picking up children and kissing them, etc., in public places, but in private and semi-private, he really didn't want to be bothered, and I wonder why that is.
Unless he was always contemplating his thoughts, you know, a lot
Just
of times.
didn't want to be interrupted with his time with the Lord.
Maybe. I don't know. I would only think, I don't know. But I did read an article, and I wish I could give everybody the, you know, chapter and verse, as you would say, if it was coming from the Bible. But it was a member of he was very, he was involved. He would have conversations with the LGBTQ, etc. Group. And this woman, I believe it was a woman that spoke with him, and he met with groups, you know, of that, I was going to say organization, but that community. And he was noted by this woman that wrote the article as being someone that would make some strides in that direction of that community, but also would make some missteps. He had made some missteps. And I think one of them was, I believe he held to marriage between a man and woman was the way the church should recognize it. I believe that was his stance on it. But he was, you know, warmed to the community, and he wanted, you know, everyone to be able to be themselves. And he told this woman about that, to make progress. He said, you know, continue your fight. So, you know, I guess that was good admonition.
Yeah,
what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the Pope has to walk a very fine line in his position if he wants to move his people any further forward than where, you know, the what's the word I'm looking for? Just the standard interpretation of the Bible and the Catholic faith. You know, homosexuality, divorce. I think that he really overreached in his commentary on immigration.
I do too.
I mean, couldn't, in my opinion, couldn't have been more foolish in the way that he spoke on the subject.
Same.
You know, and I thought, you know, I haven't heard a lot of his oratory, but in that regard, I felt like that was very, you know, revealing of how the man thought. Do you ever watch? I think his name is Judge Napolitano.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've watched it twice now. He gave a very profound commentary, or I would say provocative and profound, on natural law and natural rights, and talked about how Aquinas viewed these things, and brought it back around to Pope Francis. He's one of those who says, you know, may the next pope actually be Catholic. That's how he looked at Francis. You know, I think that's, I mean, I'm not looking for the most Catholic pope, but I think that within how the Catholics viewed this pope,
that's true,
is very interesting.
And a side note, just to interject, I believe some of the cardinals are wanting more of the orthodoxy to come back to the, you know, papal.
Okay, but Andrew wants to go back before Augustine. In other words, he wants to go back to Catholic, that is, in the context of universal church. That's where Napolitano is going with his arguments. His arguments are not for Rome. And so those people who look at the Pope as if that's a good place to be. That's not where Napolitano is. He's actually wanting and arguing we're better off having the church at large, that is, in a universal sense, and let it return to being the ecclesia that it was in the first century. And therefore, it's not about Roman Catholicism and Protestantism any longer.
It's not going to happen because they want a more Orthodox Pope. But I get that. I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, he was speaking. I can't remember the name of the gentleman that he was speaking with, but they both agreed that, the way that Francis viewed the world was that reality was defined much by how man perceived reality in the day. And that really attributed to how Francis commented on subjects like homosexuality, divorce, and immigration, rather than and in principle, I agree with the implication, which is it is the job of the church or any entity that is founded on preserving morals to be kind of an anchor in some ways, and to say that we can move forward as a society, but in these ways we are not moving forward. We're not changing here because we've spent too long thinking about these things, and we know with a high degree of confidence that this is where we should be. Now, I'm not saying that they're right, but I'm saying that is the function of, or it's a big function of what the church is, and there should be much more discussion within before a man just stands up and says, well, anybody can go wherever they want to go, which is basically what he said about immigration. I guess when you think that you are the embodiment of God walking the earth, you feel like you can just, make statements like that. But not everybody believes that.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that as in his position, possibly he would try to make these blanket feel good statements. We all deserve, to be wanted, to have a place to live, to be welcomed after our journey. And that's all well and fine. But if that was the only thing we had to worry about, welcoming people and everybody would do right. I mean, our own citizens don't even do right. We have enough problems with our own selves, honestly. But he doesn't really have to worry about those things. So it's easy to say, and it's hard to do. It's hard to do, but he can
certainly hard for him to do. And I'm talking. I'm not. There's no commentary on his recent passing.
No,
but I mean, a man who lives in a walled city. That was the most damning criticism of that his commentary on immigration, and to say that everybody should be able to go wherever they want is painting a half picture of the situation at best.
Right.
It's as if we're only talking about. It's as if we're only talking about the good immigrants and that all of them are good, and that's a lie. Not only is it true that there are bad people just naturally amongst large groups of immigrants, but it's also true that countries all over the world are looking for a place to ship off their bad people. I mean, we're not the only country that's dealing with prison overpopulations and what to do with murderers and rapists and how to morally deal with them. Well, do we kill them? Oh, well, we don't believe in the death penalty. Okay, well, let's ship them over to America. Their border's completely open, and they're a stronger country than we are. So let's let them deal with it. And I mean, that's not. I mean, certainly it's documented that that's happened, but it's also one of those things where, if you just think about the way that human beings flow in this world, and how there are so many people that give into the path of least resistance, it's just a natural conclusion that would happen.
Absolutely.
And that we should prevent it.
And I know a lot of, well, we have Catholic friends. Everyone does. Catholic people that are Catholic in our families. We know that. And not everybody feels the way the Pope does. Some of them do, some of them don't, just like you would a pastor, I guess. But it's easy to say from your home that we should do for others. We should feed people. We should this and that. And we should, if we can do it without harming your own. You take care of your family.
Family first.
That's right.
Yeah.
Family first. But a lot of people say, no, the people should be welcomed in this country. They should be welcomed in this country if they come through the door, as Trump says. I'm bringing him up because I admire the things that he says about immigration. I have a long list of reasons, but that's the big one. And so come through that big, beautiful door. We'll do our damnedest to help you out, to make you achieve that American dream, as so many have, the legal way. And so why be upset with that?
His current policy, even on illegal immigrants, is that, number one, first of all, let's talk about the hard stuff. If you don't turn yourself in and the government has to hunt you down and deport you and spend all that money to find you, you will never come back in this country again. That is the policy of this administration. That's the hard side. Mm-hmm. Here's the positive side. If you turn yourself in, this is stated policy. If you turn yourself in and assist with the process of helping us to get our country organized, go ahead and get deported. We will get you immediately on the track of getting you back into this country the right way. And if you work for a farm or a hotel or some other service industries that are critical to the infrastructure of this country, we will work with your employer to make sure that your departure is not going to be completely handicapping.
That's right.
And, if you need to stay a little longer to make that work, then, it's all about flexibility. It's all about what Democrats call Trump caving. Mm-hmm. Which is it's where they're not satisfied no matter what he does, whether he deports or he doesn't deport. Either he's a dictator or a weak man.
Exactly. Yeah, he can't win for losing. I mean, there's a saying, but I'm not going to say it. But yeah, he can't win for losing. I mean,
meanwhile, he's a very flexible person. He's not trying to be hard. He's not trying to. We start with these hard, fast rules because that's how you create policy. But then within that is human beings and grace and mercy and detailing these policies out in a way that works as much as possible for everybody. This isn't about just deliberately trying to train wreck lives, but it is about holding people responsible for the decisions people knew when they came into this country illegally. And yes, there are good people that came into this country illegally, good people, but they shouldn't have done it that way. And so, we want to completely get rid of the bad people. And we want to help the good people to come in the right way.
Yes. Couldn't be said better. Daryl is on now. Yay, Daryl. We were just talking about the Pope and his stance on immigration. Are we going to go to a clip now? And
we are going to a clip, and the clip needs to be stated. This is a White House press event.
The correspondence dinner they had, I think it was.
Typically, presidents go to these, as Trump has and every other president has, but Trump was not at this particular one due to obligations. Go ahead, Daryl.
I just got here about 30 seconds ago, but just hearing what Joey said and being a person with a brain, that makes complete sense, because all these people that were invited in by whatever, I would say idiots, but I think it's more of an intentional invasion, invited in to invade this country, makes it awkward to say, okay, now you were invited in, but we're going to get you out of here. But the process of what that I heard Joey describe is kind of like going back and trying to fix the mess that was made. And it sounds to me like a very logical way to fix it. And just like I said, I heard about 20 seconds, and because I have a functioning brain, to me, it can be that simple.
Because I have a functioning brain, I barely got it out.
That's cute.
It did good.
Okay, the press corps, that is, some people in the press corps are they're attempting to change the narrative, and it's based upon things said like this.
President Biden's decline and its cover-up by the people around him is a reminder that every White House, regardless of party, is capable of deception. But being truth tellers also means telling the truth about ourselves. We, myself included, missed a lot of this story, and some people trust us less because of it. We bear some responsibility for faith in the media being at such lows. I say this because acknowledging errors builds trust, and being defensive about them further erodes it. We should have done better.
Just wow. I mean,
Who was he with?
Axios.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm not. I mean, Axios is not, in my opinion, the best source, but they do try, from what I can tell, and so I'm not surprised to hear that from a representative of Axios. Far more surprised to see their CNN's data analysts constantly talking about how popular Trump is.
I mean, I always heard that liars never figure and figures never lie. And so when you have that data, there's only one way to spin it, and it's the right way.
Yeah.
And that's even kind of false because people do try to do, but
They do try to spin the data.
they do. But Daryl, didn't that, I mean, that gave me chills the first time I saw that and I heard it, that someone is actually going to tell the truth in I won't call it a mainstream media group, but it's getting to be that way. Axios is. But what did you think about that young man?
Article 2 of the Constitution states that the executive
But I think the term "some" is a little bit weak. Some responsibility. I think
Yeah.
they bared 90% of the responsibility for the lack of trust. You don't just make up stuff thinking that it will never be exposed.
Yeah, I mean, the mountain of
Start
lies.
with-
Please go ahead.
He is being
Let's hear some honesty, and that'll help get the ball rolling.
I think one of the things that he said was whenever you're trying to build trust back, you acknowledge the wrong. That builds trust and future trust, and obviously in the future for that organization, and maybe it'll bleed over to most media groups. I think a few are trying harder, but we need more to try harder. I really thought that MSNBC would be doing a better job in Trump's second administration, but they are just no better than the first. And then one thing that gets me is everybody acts like it was after the presidential debate of Biden and Trump when everybody started seeing his, him failing. Holy crap! In 2020,
Yeah, that's the
Thank
reason I
you.
didn't vote for him. Like back in 2020, I wasn't as big of a Trump fan as I am now, but I voted for Trump because I could see that the man was that Biden was senile, and Trump had already proven that he could sit and
he is being
destroy the whole world.
Article 2 of the Constitution
Perspective, it's far better to have somebody coherent in office, and he was the man. And yeah, well,
yeah,
it's mind-boggling.
they're just trying to rewrite history. Like, oh, he didn't start failing until right before the debate. When people like Daryl says, I have a brain. We saw it, didn't we, Daryl?
I mean, money talks, and we've heard that all our lives. And once I think, I don't know, it's like an addiction. Once politicians get in there and start finding how much money they can make on the side, so to speak, try to put it in their mind as an honest thing or a legitimate thing. I think they get hooked, and the compromise begins. And Trump had no need for money. As a matter of fact, he proved that in his first administration. Don't pay me. I don't need it. And have we ever had another president like that? I don't know that anyone else has ever turned down the salary. Or am I imagining that? Isn't that true?
I don't know that for a fact. I've never heard of it, but I don't know.
I think there was much more of that spirit early on when our country wasn't as wealthy as it is now. I'm just guessing that George Washington probably didn't take a huge salary to do his job.
He got paid in mutton. Probably. Okay. Anything, honey? Do you want
to? We do have another clip, and let's just play it since we're running out of time. Okay.
Article 2 of the Constitution states that the executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States of America. In other words, it is the president that defines the executive branch. When you read this language, it says that no court may take over that role. No court may define or limit the scope of the duties of an official of the executive office of the president, the people who work in the executive office. I think that what your amendment does is a violation of separation of powers, and it's a violation of Article 2 of the Constitution.
The gentlelady yield?
Yes, I will.
It's always good when the constitutionalist specialist comes in. It helps us all. So what you're saying is that the bill codifies Article 2 for purposes of the court being reminded and instructed of their limitations, and the amendment would undo that.
That's exactly right, because then it would imply that a federal court could, in fact, define or limit the scope of the duties of those individuals who work within the executive office of the president, and that is not a federal court's role. That is for, under Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution, that power is vested in a president of the United States of America.
Mr. Shoemate, what's a universal injunction?
Senator, a universal injunction is what we call an order from a court enjoining the government in a way that goes beyond the parties to the case, but applies nationwide or in some cases universally to enjoin the government.
Is it sometimes referred to as a nationwide injunction?
Yes, it is, Senator.
Okay. What's the statutory basis for a federal judge issuing an order that affects people other than the parties before the court?
I'm not aware of a statutory basis, Senator.
There is no statutory basis, is there?
No, Senator.
What's the United States Supreme Court opinion which interprets the Constitution in a way that allows a federal district court judge to do this? Can you name me that case?
I'm not aware of one, Senator.
There isn't one, is there?
I'm not aware of one, Senator.
Now, explain to me how this works. You have a plaintiff and you have a defendant. And the plaintiff files a lawsuit and goes in front of a federal judge. The federal judge has certain jurisdiction in personam and subject matter over the parties, the people, the plaintiff and the defendant. They're the only two people in court. How can a judge, a federal judge, issue an order that affects everybody else other than those in front of him or her? How is that possible?
It shouldn't be possible, Senator, but district courts do it all the time. I think on the theory that the courts need to enjoin a federal policy from going into effect, and they often will enjoin it as nationwide, so all non-parties are protected by that injunction.
I thought that if you wanted to affect parties who aren't in court, you had to file a class action.
That's correct, Senator.
So why don't the federal judges, instead of issuing a universal injunction with no legal basis, tell the plaintiff, look, you got to go file a class action if you want to impact parties who aren't subject to my court?
Senator, the Department of Justice makes that argument all the time in our briefs. I think in many cases class actions would be inappropriate. They wouldn't, the plaintiffs couldn't satisfy Rule 23 to establish a class.
So they couldn't?
Correct.
So they prefer to ask for a universal injunction?
Yes.
Okay. Does this encourage forum shopping?
Yes, Senator. Not only does it encourage forum shopping, but also district shopping and filing multiple strategic lawsuits to find one judge that will enjoin a single policy nationwide. Where if you have 5 lawsuits, a plaintiff, only one of those 5 cases needs to be successful.
And both sides, all sides, have used this as a way to forum shop, haven't they?
I think plaintiffs, regardless of administrations, will often file cases in the most favorable forum. Yes.
Okay, we've established that there's no basis in statute and no basis in Supreme Court precedent for a universal injunction. How about a common law? I mean, universal injunction is basically an equitable remedy. Did this exist in common law courts in England on which our law is based?
I don't believe so, Senator. I think the government has cited cases from the Supreme Court that says, courts are really bound by the scope of relief that a court in equity would have granted back in England before the founding, and the courts at that time would grant relief to the parties in the case, not far beyond the.
A universal injunction as a remedy is unknown in English common law, is it not?
I haven't done the research that far back, but I'm not aware of it.
I have. Okay. It's unknown. Wasn't part of equity. Only about only about 27 universal injunctions were issued in the 20th century. Does that sound about right?
That sounds about right, Senator.
But 86 of them were issued against President Trump in his first term. Is that correct?
I don't know the specific number, but they were a high number.
And so far in President Trump's second term, 30 universal injunctions have been issued against him. Have they not?
Senator, I don't have a specific number, but that sounds about right.
The universal injunction has become a weapon against the Trump administration, has it not?
Yes.
And tell me again in my last 10 seconds, tell me the basis for universal injunction in Article 3. I read Article 3, which defines judicial power. Where does it mention universal injunction?
It does not, Senator. It says courts are to decide the case or controversy before them, which is based on the parties to the case.
So the Congress could act and say, look, federal judges, you render a decision to a plaintiff or a defendant, but you can't impact people outside of your courtroom other than through a class action. That's why God created class actions, isn't it?
Yes, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
That's a lot to unpack there.
There is.
But I saw it, and I didn't investigate this further, but I saw a diagram, and it had Obama, Bush, Obama, Bush, and Biden, and Trump. And it said, and these figures are not right except for Trump's figure. It said Obama deported 3 million, 0 injunctions. Bush 2 million, 0. Biden 2 million, 0 injunctions. President Trump 100,000, 30 injunctions. Now, if you didn't know dog mess about the law, I would say, just looking at that diagram, something is wrong and it's rotten in Denmark and you need to investigate it. Wouldn't you say that, Michael?
I would agree. And what Donald Trump is doing, and I'm thankful for him doing this, and note that Harriet stepped up to the plate and Harriet replaced
Lion Liz Cheney.
Yeah, Liz Cheney.
That was her nickname.
And I want people to think about this. Did Donald Trump reach out to some person in business to replace Cheney? No. He reached out to a constitutional scholar. That needs to be nuanced again and again and again, simply because Donald Trump is not trying to get away with something. He's trying to, he's doing his best, that is, to get at some of the things that are going on within the three branches of government. And one of the things that he's actually challenging, and Harriet's going to do a good job, that is, and she has done, if you'll simply watch what she has said, that is in all of these different venues on the dais, you will see that this Marbury versus Madison is probably going to come up within the next, I would say, next 12 months. That's where this is all going. And so it's interesting that Kennedy would take this line of questioning simply because it's almost as if these people are tag teaming, that is, to nuance what you can do in the executive branch, what you can do in the legislative branch, what you should be doing in the judicial branch. And the judicial branch has overreached a great deal. And this is, in a sense, the game that's being played with the lower courts. And so I'm thankful that Kennedy did speak out. It's a good thing.
May I ask a question?
I love that guy.
Yes.
Yeah, I love Kennedy.
He's something.
Yeah.
He's my neighbor.
The question that has always been just itching in the back of my mind is why, if the way that was laid out is accurate, and I believe it is, why would the president or the executive branch honor any such injunction? Or the consequences if you don't honor an illegal injunction?
Well, it's Trump is trying to make the argument. There was a way of stating things years ago in law, and it was called vox populi, vox Dei. And what that means is the voice of the people is the voice of God. And most people, when they look at what's happening, they just buy into what's going on, that is on CNN, Fox News, or MSNBC. They don't really think about the branches of a government and who's elected, who's not. And so you have all of these unelected justices that had to go through a particular kind of process. But they, in a sense, they dug in a little bit too deep. In other words, they became, in a sense, the greater power of the three. And when you think about it on its face, what Donald Trump is doing, he's doing much of what Thomas Jefferson was trying to do. He said, you've got to go back to the people, because if you have the voice of God being in the form of, let's say 5 justices or 6 or now 9, that can't be the voice of God. And that's the thing that we declared our independence from, was the king being the voice of God. And the founders of this country did not want, let's say, the legislative branch to be the voice of God. They didn't want the president to be the voice of God. They certainly didn't want the judiciary to become the voice of God. And so you have one unelected judge, that is a lower court judge, that is making a decision against, that is, the president. And that's why it's very important to listen to what Harriet said. He has the power given to him, that is, by the people, and the people gave him that power, and he has exercised that power. And now you have lower court judges stepping in and putting or inputting this shoving something in there that should never be, and that would be these injunctions. And these injunctions have not been tested, believe it or not. And Trump is the one who's going to put it to a test. And that's why he's hesitating. He's not hesitating as if he could not do something. He could, but he wants them tested. In other words, if there's ever been a president that is actually practicing, that term that everybody's talking about, democracy, that is when the branches of a government are doing something to keep equity alive, that is fairness alive, and a check and balance system, it would be Donald Trump. That's the thing that I don't get, because he could push and get away with it, but he's not. What he's doing, he's actually putting things on the table. Injunctions are put out there, but he's got the right people in place now to where these things are going to be tested. And you're going to find that our branches of government are going to start working more properly, because they were out of whack. That is, by the time that the Marbury versus Madison case came along, and in my view, that's the thing that made everything kind of topple. And so, does that make sense?
Yeah, well, yeah. But to answer Joey's question, that did make sense. But I think would be a contempt charge, and then I believe the House could bring probably impeachment orders, possible due to that. But I believe I heard somewhere, I read that there would be a contempt of court charge against. It's the DOJ bringing it on behalf of the president.
But think about what that entails. In other words, the executive order, according to how people are putting that forward, they're saying that if a court order is much more powerful than an executive order. And the argument that Jefferson would make, that's not the voice of the people. That president represents the voice of the people, because this person was elected, even got a mandate. And when you get to that point, wow, the only power that you ever have, according to the Constitution, would be given, that is, to the government, what the people give to it. That is the consent of the governed. So you go back to the consent of the governed. This is what the people are giving, that is, to President Trump. This is what the people want him to do. And then some lower court justice steps in. Just because I can do it, I can shove it in. And what it does, it reminds me of this. And this is the game that the Democrats are playing, and it sickens me. It's like going to a football game where the officials are calling, I'm going to throw a flag. You throw a flag on every play to where you can't even have the game being played. And so the Democrats know that they have officials that will keep throwing the flag. And the question is, how long are the American people going to put up with officials out there on the football field throwing flags on every play? I mean, football will never be played. They did not allow President Trump to be president in the first 4 years. And that's what they're trying to do. And these, in these days that he's been president, they're trying to stop him, that is, from making any moves. And so you can always use this analogy. Why would you take your officials and start throwing flags? Why would you not allow this process to work itself out to see if this would be doable?
Right, for the next person.
Right.
Daryl, what are some of your thoughts on this mess?
Well, a couple of comments. Of course, I made the statement. I love John Kennedy. I love the way he puts things, and it's just kind of fun listening to someone with the way he talks. Confounding the system. But the thing that I think it should point out to us, we should expect, is the corruption that's taken place is huge in our government, and I think it's being exposed more and more as time goes on. And so to look back and say, why have they been? I think a good term to use would be getting away with this. Has to do with they've been getting away with a lot of things that are unethical, that are unconstitutional, and etc. So, but the other thing I wanted to say is I used to be bothered by Donald Trump's redundancy. It seemed like he constantly repeated himself. Every time you talk about those who come across our border, they're emptying out their prisons, they're
Oh my
emptying out their
God.
entertainment centers. So you know what I'm talking about. But I've learned to appreciate that redundancy because I've heard him say again and again when about this deportation and the things that are going on. He said, "This is what the people elected me to do. I'm doing what the people have mandated that they want done."
True.
Instead of saying, "This is what I want to do," and give in to their claims about he's a dictator and this and that and the other. He keeps reminding us again and again, this is what I ran on, this is what I was elected for, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah,
and
there's
it drives that point home.
You're absolutely right. That's a fantastic point.
you know when I think the Democrats will finally admit to what's the lady's name that was the constitutional
Harriet
Harriet
Hageman.
Harriet Hageman. Yeah, I've watched her numerous times. She's really brilliant. When do you think the Democrats will finally admit to what she's saying?
Well, they have. That is, in the exchange, they can't dismiss it, but they will throw absurdities.
No. I mean, in the sense that they not just in word, but in saying, "Oh yes, the executive branch is defined by the president. The president has the power to issue the executive orders. He is the voice of the people, et cetera, et cetera." When do you think that they will? Because they will admit to it. They will finally admit to it in action. That will be just before the Democratic president is about to be back in charge.
Well, it reminds me of the Pope. And I didn't get to say anything concerning the Pope, but I want to say something concerning the Pope. I think it's fundamentally wrong, ethically wrong, to have a Pope. And if someone becomes the Pope, the best thing that they could do is to put an end to the absurdities, that is, of the Catholic Church. And what I mean by that, the only thing that the popes ever do is chase isms. They're not about telling the truth. They do not use the correspondence theory of truth, that is, to get at anything. No, that's not what they do. They're looking for dogma and doctrine, and they're looking for some kind of diachronical stand. And so however the text has been read, let's say in the 1600s or whatever, they're going to go for that, as opposed to, what did the author intend? And maybe some of those writers didn't know what they were talking about. They're not even willing to say, hey, maybe these aristocrats that, who put together the four Gospels, or actually three of the Gospels, maybe we need to ask questions pertaining to them. But we're led, that is, to think that the sheepherder's version of God is the best version of God ever. And And these individuals are ever so willing to tell you what you must do, that is, in your life, that is, how you should regulate your behavior. And when are people going to wake up and quit putting their lives on hold, that is, for Catholicism? It doesn't make any sense. I don't care whether you're a Protestant or a Roman Catholic. Why are you putting your life on hold? And why are you so devout to that ism? Because if you're waiting around for the new pope, that is, to create meaningful change, he's not going to do that. He's going to give you something that may feel good, but it's not going to be, it's not going to have any basis in fact. And so here this morning, we're trying to do everything that we can, that is, to raise law to where, or challenge law to where it actually meets ethical standards. In other words, it used to be true that it was legal, that is, to have a slave. Well, I'm very, very thankful for those people who fought against that law, because they kept saying, here's virtue, here's where the law is. We've got to raise the law up to where it's virtuous. And so we lack that in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Both parties are in big trouble. And it's because their aim is not at what is true. Their aim is not ethical. Their aim is not moral, and so on and so on. Neither is the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is not looking for someone who would spread truth across the world. That's not what they're looking for. They're not looking for somebody who's a functional person who would say, hey, listen, don't worry about dogma and doctrine. If you have a relationship with God, let it be personal. Don't let, what the sheep herder said about God, wag whatever your belief is concerning God. Let's do better. When you know better, you do better. That's not what you're going to get in the Pope form, because the Pope, technically speaking, is the head of a government. And that government governs a large number of people. And these people are considered sheep, and they like being sheep, and they don't mind being led to the slaughter. They're trained to do so. And so if you want to be a dog-like person, that is, you want to be the pet, that is, of someone who's going to be your boss, and you want to wag your tail and all of that, be a Catholic.
All right. Are we going to play that last one about?
Yeah.
Well, let me just set it up real quick. When Joey said, "When will the Democrats, change their tune, or when is that going to happen?" It kind of reminds me of this next little clip.
He is being treated no better or worse than anyone else. This is not selective prosecution. That this is not somebody who's singled out. That he is being treated just like anyone else. That is what it means to have a rule of law. That is what the Justice Department is really signaling and messaging here, is that everyone will be treated, as Merrick Garland has said, as equally in this country. This is really a great day for America. So there has been a violation here that we know for sure, and it is not the judge. Right, exactly. You don't do it. Even if you thought that there was a ground for doing this, the judgment call that you thought that this is the case to bring, it tells you everything. There is no adult in the room who would have said, "Are you kidding me? Why would you possibly do this?" And the answer is because we want to send a signal to the judiciary. And that's what you shouldn't be doing.
So the same guy, obviously, the first time he starts speaking, he's talking about when President Trump was arrested, had charges filed against him in court. No one's above the law. We've heard that. No one's above the law. No one's above the law. When it had to do with that, Merrick Garland is great. He did the right thing. The second time the man is speaking, he's talking about, that's not a good idea to, and it was about the judge that either the one that had the illegal immigrant in the home or the one that helped one try to escape from ICE. And they brought charges against both of these judges. And he's talking about that. And so one time it's okay to do, we got to make sure people see it and they know that, no one's above the law. We will bring charges against anybody that breaks the law. The second time he's speaking, this is, just a judgment on it in and of itself is not very good to do that for the judiciary to have, a charge against them for doing something. So hypocrisy at its finest. Right, Daryl?
I agree. Absolutely. And, there's something almost like a halo or something around these judges. Like, they're a judge. You can't judge them. They do the judging. And it's almost mystical. And it seems to me, that they're trying to treat it that way. And hopefully no one will fall for that.
That's right. Fingers crossed.
I think you're spot on. I mean, I couldn't have explained it any better. I mean, good job.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's all the clips we have, and it's over time. And it was good to see Terry. It looks like he's in the comment section. He's up and taking nourishment, so that's good.
Yeah.
That's right. Hey there.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Okay, well, we are going to get on out of here, I believe, right?
We are going to get out of here. And please understand what we are attempting to do. We're going to use NCG as our name. And so if you've been looking forward to this versus that, what we're going to do is put that name on the shelf for a few days and go with NCG Studios, because I think that some people are confused at times. When we're talking about something, we don't want to always provide, let's say, the opposite view of, let's say, what I'm putting out or what my wife is putting out. That's not our interest. In other words, Daryl wants to say things without always feeling like I need to pay for someone else to come in to, have that opposition. And so I think that too many people suffer from what's called an oppositional disorder. And so I think if you always are trying to be combative, you're trying to take the other side, I think that's going too far. And so we've decided, let's just call this NCG Studios for a while, and let's just have a conversation that goes both ways. And so Daryl, what he's going to be doing, he's going to be putting his views out there. Listen to him. Joey's going to be putting his views out there. So is my wife. So am I, and others. It doesn't always have to be a battle. It can be when, let's say, some people are in sync. And so we do have a position, and we would rather aim at what is true and try to encourage people to aim at what is true. And I think that we have a lot of good to offer in that context. And so with that said, we're going to get out of here, and you're going to end this morning, Daryl. Give us the final word.
Well, I couldn't agree more to what you just said. And of course, the goal is to bring people closer together. And, you don't do that by compromising and saying, well, I know that you see things that way, but the facts show this or that, So there is more to it than just people's opinions and what they've decided to believe.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. All right. Don't forget to tune in on Monday and Wednesday at 7 for, is it the conversation?
It's called The Conversation.
The conversation
with
this week. With Daryl and Terry. And I was making sure Terry was going to feel up to it. So Daryl and Terry will be with you guys on Monday and Wednesday at 7 p.m. Make sure you don't miss that, and sign up and subscribe and get notifications so you will be notified. And we will see you next week.